The exercise files for today's course are located in the video description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hello everyone, I am Trish Connor-Cato. Welcome to Tableau video training course. Tableau is a visual analytics platform that makes it easier for people to explore and manage data, and faster to discover and share insights that can change businesses and the world. It helps people and organizations be more data-driven. Tableau supports data prep, analysis, governance, collaboration, and more. As a continuation of the Tableau Introduction video training course, this advanced course is designed to boost the students' competence when it comes to creating visualizations and creating dashboards. The course goes into considerable detail on these two subjects and explores, among other areas, how to create a range of different charts, maps, user-defined fields, as well as a host of advanced features and abilities. We'll start by connecting to a variety of data sources. This will leave you with some great workbooks to practice on and develop on your own after this course. We'll also cover making dashboards relevant and some visual best practices that you can use throughout your Tableau career. We'll end with other ways to publish your dashboards and how to mobilize them.
Looking to support our channel and get a great deal? Become a member today to unlock ad-free videos. That's right, your favorite courses without a single ad. Interested in a specific video? Purchase one of our ad-free courses individually. Looking for even more? Gain access to exams, certificates, and exclusive content at learnitanytime.com. More information can be found in the video description below.
In Module 14, we'll focus on making dashboards relevant. In the first lesson, we're going to do some string manipulation on dashboards. In Lesson 2, we'll review how to correct data exports from Tableau to Excel if you have any problems, so to warn you about a situation you could perhaps run into in the future. In Lesson 3, we're going to blend data. We have two Excel files in the files for video description that we'll be using, Data Blending File 1 and Data Blending File 2. In Lesson 4, you'll learn and use some optimizing tips for efficient, fast visualization. And in our last lesson, we're going to add an infographic to a dashboard. And for that, there is a shapes folder in the files for video description. You're going to want to access those shapes. And so just have that folder open when we get to Lesson 5. At the bottom of this slide, I have a link to a website where you can grab some more infographic images that you can play around with on your own. We're going to use several of the ones that are in the shapes folder, but some of them we're not going to use. We're going to use some in this module and some in the next module, but it'll still leave you some to play with. I brought up a new dashboard sheet, but before I did that, I named the sheet tab for the previous one, Analyzing by Region and Customer Dash. Since there's already a sheet, as you've seen previously, with that name, you can't have two sheets with the same name. So I just added dash at the end of the sheet tab. Now, on this dashboard, before we start building it, I just want to show you something. If you go to the Analysis menu, you'll notice from the dashboard, you could only edit a calculated field. You can't create one. So we want to create a calculated field for string manipulation. We'll come back to this dashboard, but in the meantime, bring up a new sheet. When we first started working with the sample superstore data, one of the first things we did from the data source tab is we split the customer name into customer first and customer last. Now we have a need to have them as customer name again. Also, we'd like to have the region and then the state all combined. So we're going to actually create two calculated fields here. You can either go to analysis or to our usual drop down, and let's create a calculated field. And we're going to name this field customer name. And it's a really simple calculation. In Tableau, you use the plus sign for concatenation, and you have to concatenate in any spaces that you want between the first and the last name as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to start typing customer first, and then we're going to do a plus sign, and then we're going to do a single quote, space, single quote, another plus sign, and then customer last. So we're saying we want the customer first name, and we want a space between it and the customer last name. Now let's see what we're having. Okay. So we can't name this customer name because that field already exists. And even though we hid it, it's still in our data source. So we're going to name this. I'm going to just abbreviate it to cust name. And now we can click OK. Now we're going to drag cust name. It's fine there. I guess it'll be fine there right now on the rows shelf. So you can see that each customer name has a space in between the first and the last one. If we didn't do that single quote, space, single quote, if we just did customer first plus customer last, it would be all mushed together. And sometimes I work so fast, I forget to put the space in, and then I look at it and I go back in and edit the field. So we could have gone back to the data source view and unhid customer name so that we'd be able to use it again, but wanted to show you how to concatenate. So I have one more concatenation example for you here. We're going to put the region and the state together, and that doesn't already exist in our data set. So this is a more valid use of concatenation. So we're going to create another calculated field. And this one we're going to call region/state. And so it's the same thing. We're going to grab the region field. I'm going to do our plus sign. And then I want to concatenate in a slash. So I'm going to do the single quote, slash, single quote, another plus sign, and then grab the state province field, not the group. And go ahead and click OK. So the first thing we want to do is we want to grab the region state field that we just created, and we want to add it to the hierarchy of location under region. So one thing I can do is I can click on its down arrow, hover over hierarchy, add to hierarchy, and we're going to select location. So it will put it at the bottom of the location hierarchy, and we can just drag it up so it's after region. Now let's drag region state to the filter shelf, and we're going to select all and click OK. And now we're going to right click on that filter and show the filter. So I'd like you to change that filter to a multiple value drop-down filter. And so it should look like the one on my screen. Now we're going to find our sales field and drag it onto text. And then we want to format our sales numbers, so we want them to look like currency with 2 decimal places. So we're going to right click on the sum of sales pill, go to format, under default go to numbers. We're going to choose currency standard because I believe that comes with the 2 decimal places. Yes, it does. And so we can click away from there and close that format pane. So when we look at our drop down for our region state filter, we see that the region is combined with the state and they're separated by the slash. So if I wanted to, I could filter for something. I'm going to uncheck all and I'm going to filter for East New York. So here are the customers and the sales from the East region and from New York State. And then I'm going to go back and choose all. The other thing we want to do with that filter is we want to format it so we can give it the shading that we've been using. And we can close that format. And what we'll do is we'll name this sheet Customer Sales by Region/State. And go ahead and save. So I've dragged that onto our weighting dashboard sheet. And now when I go to the analysis menu, I can create a calculated field from the dashboard because it's going to be attached to this sheet. When it's a blank dashboard, all you can do is edit existing calculated fields. So if I wanted to edit the calculated field that we created called cusName, I can just access it from this list. But what I'm going to have you do is create another calculated field and call it Customer Last and First. How about that? Customer Last and First. So I'm going to have you do that on your own while I'm doing it on my side. So your calculation should look like mine, except that the second one should be Customer First. I grabbed the wrong one. And I concatenated the comma space in there. And I'm going to go ahead and choose OK. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this sheet from the listing of sheets on the right side. And I'm going to swap out customer name for customer last first. And it looks like we have a customer that doesn't have a first name. So now we're seeing this one up at the top. It looks like it doesn't have a last name and the first name is after the comma. So the first name is Corey Lock. I guess they just said it's like Madonna with just one name. So now when I go back to our dashboard, it will have updated because we made the swap at the sheet level. And we don't really need to keep this as a dashboard. So I'm going to go over to the right side of it, go to the More Options drop down, and choose Remove from Dashboard. And we'll leave this dashboard here for future use. So now I'm back in Sorter View because I want us to go to the Sales Aggregate sheet. And we're going to modify it somewhat. So before we get into this, we're talking about correcting data exports from Tableau to Excel. So sometimes when you export to Excel as a crosstab. When you open it in Excel, the data could be out of the order that you intend it to be. And so the reason why that happens is that Tableau will arrange it first by dimensions, then by measures, and each of those are arranged alphabetically. So it really depends on the amount of data you have. I don't know if I can force this issue with the data, but we'll see what happens when we finish modifying the sheet and we export it. And I'll show you another tricky wicket as concerns exporting as a crosstab to Excel along the way. So the first thing we want to do on this sheet is we want to add the sales field to rows 5 more times. And once we do that, the second one, we want to do the drop down and we want to change the measure to average. For the third one, you're going to go back to the drop down and we want the median. The fourth one, we want the count. The fifth one, we're going to go for the maximum. And the last one, we're going to choose minimum. So, and then we're going to add another field to columns, and that's going to be order date, and we want it in front of market segment, and we'll leave it on year. So this is really not a lot of data. I mean, we have several measures on here. We have a date. We have one dimension. We'd probably need a lot more things on here for it to mess up when it will require a correction in Excel. So now we're on the worksheet menu. We're going to hover over Export and we're going to choose Crosstab to Excel. So it may take a little bit to load everything into Excel. So this came over pretty clean. I forgot that we had category and color over there. So we actually have 2 dimensions and 6 measures and a date. And it came over really cleanly. However, it's not going to perform that way all the time, and you just need to be prepared for that. So it just depends on the data load that it's processing. Now, I mentioned that there's a tricky wicket when it comes to exporting to Excel as a crosstab. So let's leave this Excel book open, and it may have opened in the background behind your Tableau, but we're going to leave it open. And I'm going to bring up the sorter view again. And we'll go to... Let's go to pie chart 2. And on this one, we're going to go up to worksheet, export, crosstab to Excel. And now, let me minimize this. Now it's going to work. Sometimes if you export to Excel, and you haven't saved the previous workbook, it will give you an error message. But of course, because I wanted to show you that error message that says cannot export to Excel as a crosstab, it's usually because you have a sheet hanging out open in the background. But since I'm trying to show you that error, it's not going to happen. So you need to kind of be prepared for that as well. I'm going to close this one, and I'm not going to save it. And actually, I'm not going to save either one. So typically, if you have one that's open and hanging out there, it won't let you do another one until you save the previous one or discard it. So just want to prepare you for those situations. So before we get into blending data, I want you to have a little bit of an understanding of blending. So blends, unlike relationships or joins, never truly combine the data. Instead, blends query each data source independently. The results are aggregated to the appropriate level. Then the results are presented visually together in the view. Because of this, blends can handle different levels of detail and working with published data sources. They're also established individually on every sheet and can never be published because there is no true blended data source, simply blended results from multiple data sources in a visualization. Data blending is particularly useful when the blend relationship linking fields need to vary on a sheet-by-sheet basis or when combining published data sources. So we have those two Excel files that are in the video description that we're going to be using for this, Data Blending File 1 and Data Blending File 2. So if you haven't already grabbed them, you want to put them in whatever directory you've been using for those files. And we're going to open both files before we actually go back to Tableau and blend the data. So on the left side of my screen, I have Data Blending File 1. I'm just going to adjust that column. And then on the right side, I have Data Blending File 2. So in the first one, the tab is Employee Data. It has the name, the employee ID, and the salary. In File 2, it also has the name and the employee ID, but in addition, it has a department ID and a bonus. So we're going to blend this data so that we can use fields from each file in the same visualization. You can go ahead and close both of those Excel files. And bring Tableau back up. Now in Tableau, what we want to do is save Sample Superstore Live again. And we're going to go to File, Close. We will be using it again. So you want to bring the first file in from Excel. So we're going to go on Connect to Microsoft Excel, and we want to grab Data Blending File 1. So it brings us to the data source view, and we're going to go to Sheet 1. And the way this works is you bring in the first file and you drag a field from that file into the view. So we're going to drag the name field to rows. And then we're going to go to the data menu and choose New Data Source. And we're going to go ahead and grab the second blending file from Excel. So when we bring that in, it also brings us to Data Source View. And we're going to go to Sheet 1. So now at the top, we can see that we have two different data sources here. File 1 and File 2. Now, the File 2 is what we're currently on. And you'll notice to the right of the name field, there is an orange link. It looks more red to me, but it's described as orange. And that means it's blending them based on the name field at this point. Now, sometimes you might see a gray link, and that would mean there's something wrong with the connection between the files, or no link, which means it wasn't able to automatically detect for some reason the common file or find name in the other file for some reason. So if that happens, if you don't have the orange link, you would want to go to Data, Edit Blend Relationships. And notice over here, it's showing both name fields, right? It's saying the primary data source and the secondary data source. But sometimes if that's not there, you would have to go to Custom, Add, and then you would be able to choose Name. And once you do that and you OK, so I did it and it's going to replace it with the same one. So I'm going to say OK. And that's only because it did map it. But if you have to map it, that's the way you would do it. And you would just OK your way out of there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to display my Show Me pane. And I'm on the second data source. And I want to drag bonus. I'm going to drag it right into the table. It's going to change the type of viz. That's why I have Show Me open. I'm going to force it back into a text table. And then I'm going to go to the first data source. And now you see that we added a field from the second data source. It has the orange check mark on it. I'm back on the first data source. And we're going to just drag salary into the table. And it didn't change it. It left it as a table. That's cool. And then we're going to go back to the second data source. And we want to drag in department ID and employee ID. And then we want to arrange them. So I'm going to click on the employee ID header and hold, and I'm going to just drag it over and drop it in front of bonus. Then I'm going to put department ID to the right of employee ID. Salary, I want to be after department ID. So you should have employee ID, department ID, salary, and bonus. Now take a look at Yana. Yana wasn't on both of those sheets. So she was on the department sheet, but she wasn't on the other sheet. And so we'll say that she left the company, but she wasn't removed from the sheet. So I'm going to right click on Yana and choose Exclude. And I can collapse Show Me now. And let's go ahead and name that sheet Data Blending. And you can save the workbook with the same name. And then we can go to File, Close. And we're going to reopen Sample Superstore Live. So our last lesson in this module is optimizing tips for efficient, fast visualizations. And so the first tip is reduce the scope. The fewer sheets and data sources, the faster your viz will perform. You would also want to consider limiting the number of filters. Each filter in the view requires a query in order to populate the options. If you add a lot of interactive filters, it can cause the dashboard to take a long time to render. Also, reduce the number of marks. More marks mean more processing power and memory to render. Keep in mind that too many data points can reduce the visual analytics value by causing information overload. To avoid this, compile related views and connect them with action filters so you can go from an overview to a more granular view as you explore the data. And you would also want to remove any unneeded dimensions from the detail shelf. So let's use an optimizing tip. Let's go back to our sales by state map dashboard. And I should have pointed this out earlier. The dashboard tabs have the plus sign in the box in front of them. So I'm going to go to sales by state dashboard. And I'd put the sales by state cross tab as floating over in the right pane. So an optimization tip would be not to do that, right? So I'm going to select that sales by state cross tab. And if you hadn't put it there, you could, do this just to undo it. And I'm going to do the drop down arrow and I'm going to remove it from the dashboard. And I'm going to use a dashboard action instead to connect to that cross tab. So I'm going to go up to the dashboard menu, click on actions, and we're going to add an action. And the action is go to sheet. So we're going to name this Sales by State crosstab. So the source sheets is the sales by state map dashboard. And in the target sheet down here, we want to look for that sales by state crosstab. Now for this one, we could put it on a menu or we could put it on select. I think the menu gives you better control, and I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to click OK. So now instead of having that additional data on the dashboard, I can right click anywhere on my map, and you'll see that the sales by state crosstab is on the menu. And when I click on it, it takes me to that sheet. And we can go back to our sales by state dashboard because they want to do something a little bit different. And so because we took that off and we put it on the menu, it might be a good idea to have a caption or a text box explaining that for the end user that they can right click to get to that. So I'm going to go ahead and add a caption for that one. So I'm going to worksheet show caption. And actually, I think we should keep the caption that's there, except that we're going to select all of it, make it bold, make it orange, and we'll use a text box to explain how to get to the other sheet from here. So I'm going to choose floating, grab the text box, and I'll put it over on the right, and then we'll have to resize it down. I'm going to make it left, justified, and I'm going to type right click on Viz to go to the sales by state crosstab sheet for another view of this information. And then of course I'm going to select it, make it bold, make it orange. And then I'll just size it so that it fits over on the right. And we can go ahead and save our file. Whenever you access a dashboard sheet and it takes a little while to render, once it does, just as a reminder, you can look down on the left side of the status bar to see how many marks are on the dashboard. If you have an exorbitant amount of marks on a dashboard, it's going to take up more processing time. So that's when you want to think about other ways, like that dashboard action that we just used. If you have additional supporting information, it would be better to leave it on its own sheet and not overwhelm the dashboard. Now we're going to do something really interesting. We're going to add an infographic to your Tableau dashboard. On the module slide, I showed you the link where you'll be able to access more shapes. Now, we're not going to use all of the shapes that you put in your files for video description shape files in this module. We'll use some in this module. We'll use some in the next module. And then there's a few extra ones in there for you to play with on your own. So I have all of the ones from the video description selected, and I'm going to hold down my control key, and this is my Tableau repository shapes, my shapes folder where we put the Learn It logo earlier. So I want to hold down control and copy all of these shapes into my Tableau repository shapes, my shape. Otherwise, we won't be able to access them. And now we can go ahead and bring up Tableau. The first thing we need to do is create a new sheet. And let's add region to color. And we're going to drag sales to rows. On our marks card, we're going to change the shape from automatic to shape. And then we're going to click on the shape mark, and we're going to choose more shapes. And over on the right, the first thing you're going to want to do, well, I'll show you this so you'll know if you forget what to do. So let's do the drop down next to default, and we're going to select my shapes. Now, even though we drag those into the my shapes folder, they're not showing because down here you have to reload the shapes. And now you're seeing all the shapes in that folder. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the data item, and I'm going to use the people shapes, and we'll select the blue one and just click OK. So since we have region and color, it changed the color of all of those to match the region legend. Now we're going to drag the region field to filters, and we want to select none and then select central and click OK. So you only have the blue shape on there for the central region. We're going to go to the size on the marks card, and I'm going to increase the size of that shape. And then I'm going to go up to the toolbar and change it to fit the width. And that's about a good size for the shape. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the label on the marks card, show the mark label, and we want to format that label. So let's go down to the font, change it to 20 point, bold, and we're going to give it a corresponding blue color. Now we're going to hide the title on the sheet, and we are going to name the sheet Central Graphic. And now we're going to copy the sheet. On the copy of the sheet, we are going to change the filter. So I'm going to just right click and edit the filter in the shelf and uncheck central and check east. And then OK. So now it updates to the east color. And what we want to do is we want to go to label and change the label color to match the graphic. So now what I'm going to have you do on your own, you're going to copy the sheet 2 more times. You can copy East Graphic. And you're going to change the region and change the color of the mark. So the label. And go ahead and do that now. And then I'll be doing it on my end. And we'll compare when we're done. So go ahead and pause the video. So here is my West graphic, which is my last sheet, and here is my South graphic. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and move on and create the other things that are necessary to make this into an infographic dashboard. So we're going to make individual dashboards for each region ultimately. But before we do so, we're going to create another 2 visualizations that will also go on the dashboards. And so let's bring up a new sheet. And on this sheet, let's drag order date to columns. We're going to leave it on year. Sales to rows. Region to color. And we want region to be in the filter as well. Let's go ahead and filter for central and click OK. Let's go ahead and change it to fit with. And we don't like seeing it up at the top. You can go ahead and hide the title. And by the way, we can get rid of that region card on the right. We can hide the card. And we want it to scale better. So we're going to change the axis. I'm going to right click on the axis and choose edit. And on the right, I'm going to uncheck include 0. And you see how it sizes it more appropriately. And we can close the edit axis box. Let's go ahead and show mark labels. And let's format the font. Make it bold and make it blue. There's another cool feature we haven't covered yet, Right-click anywhere on the line and choose Explain Data. And the data guide will open on the right side of the screen. So it lets you know whatever mark. I happen to have a mark selected, so I'll deselect the mark. So it gives you the viz details. You could enter a description that helps users understand this viz. And we don't have to do that. Additional resources, you can add a link, any applied filters, the data that's in this viz. No outlier marks found. If I click on a mark, then it updates to let me know the data in that is represented in that mark. And it gives you an explanation now. Explore underlying values for central. And then it gives you the high amount for sum of sales, so on and so forth. Down at the bottom, what is unique about Central 2021? Oops, and now it's executing the query for me. So down at the bottom, it says 16 of 34 fields analyzed. So it analyzes all the other dimensions, and then it gives you other dimensions of interest, right? And up at the top, there is a back pointing arrow, so we can go back to the first page of the data guide. And I'm going to deselect that mark. And we're going to name this sheet Annual Sales by Region. And then I'm going to do a colon and a space and type Central. So now the cool thing is you're going to get to do this on your own 3 more times. We need one for East, West, and South. So just like we did with the graphics, before we start doing that, go back to your central graphic and notice that the data guide is showing there as well. Let's go to the region card and hide the card. And we're going to do the same for the other graphic sheets. I forgot to have us hide the card. If we had hit it on the first one, then it wouldn't be on the copies, but better late than never. We're just not going to need that on the dashboard. So now I'm ready to copy the annual sales by region central sheet. And again, you're going to just do one sheet for each region. Go ahead and do that on your own. Pause the video, and I'll be doing it on my end as well. So here is my East one. I just actually renamed the sheet, changed the filter, and colored the label to match the line. Here's my South, same thing. And here is my West. So we've created the graphic sheets. We created the individual line chart sheets. Now we're going to create another sheet that has a different type of visualization on it, and it's going to be for all regions. So we won't have to duplicate this one at all. Let's go ahead and bring up a new sheet. And for this one, we're going to drag order date and sales to columns. And we want region to be in our rows and also region on color. We don't need a filter here. We can go ahead and hide that region legend card. We're going to hide the title. And we want to show the mark labels and go to the font so we can format them as bold. And then Let me go back to label. And for the alignment, we're going to choose the horizontal center option so they're inside the bars. We're going to name this sheet All Sales by Region and Year. And so your data guide updates for every visualization that you're on. A couple of the lines had an outlier, but this one has 2 outliers, meaning the values are dramatically different than the other values across all of these different regions. And now we're ready to bring up a new dashboard sheet. Once you bring up the dashboard sheet, change your size on the sheet and save your file. So I've made my size on this one. I did this one at 1600 by 900 because I want to accommodate for this data guide on the right, which carries over. And when we're done with creating this dashboard, we're going to collapse this panel so there'll be more space. If you can make yours wider, go ahead and do so. And now we're going to start building this dashboard. So the first thing that we want to do is I'm going to scroll down in the list so I can see all my graphics. We want to make sure this is on tiled at the bottom. It should be. But we're going to grab the central graphic and drag it into the view. And then instead of entire view, we're going to do fit with. And even though we hid the title on the graphic, it's coming over here. So let's go ahead and hide the title. And I'm going to just move this panel over a little bit while we're working. And then I'll resize it a little bit bigger at the end. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to, where is it? We're going to grab our annual sales by region central and drag it on the bottom half of the dashboard. And then we're going to drag its top edge up so it's right underneath the graphic. And now we're going to grab all sales by region and year and drag that onto the bottom. And for that one, instead of standard, we're going to do fit height. And let me check the line chart. For the line chart, we'll just change it to fit width. So the first 2 are fit width. And then the last one is fit height to fill the rest of the remaining space down there. I'm going to go to the dashboard menu and choose format. And for dashboard shading, I'm going to do that pale orangey color, just so we kind of have those white spaces filled in with something. We're going to name this dashboard. We'll name it Central Region Sales. And then we can go ahead. I'm going to close the Format Dashboard pane and show the dashboard title. That's kind of okay. I think I'm going to right click on the title and format it. And I want to change the font or the shading of the dashboard title to match the color of the graphic. So some kind of bluish color. I think that might work. I don't really like that. So I am going to do Control Z, the handy undo. And you can fiddle with that color for the title on your own if you want. I mean, it's not bad, but it's okay. Let's go ahead and we're going to hide the title on our line chart. And we're going to hide the title on the bottom chart. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the Format Dashboard pane. And up at the top where you have your dashboard and your layout tab, there's a left pointing arrow. Click it so you can collapse that pane. And then I can widen the data guide to take up more space. And so let me do something here. Looks like the top of my head is cut off. I'll fix that later. So whatever visualization you're on, the data guide will update. And this would be something that I would put a caption on it, you know, just explaining what's on here. So let's put the caption on the graphic one. So we'll go to Worksheet, Show Caption. And so we're going to edit that. I'm going to select all of the information. And I'll put the infographic is showing the total sales amount for the particular region. I press Enter. And then I'm going to type the line chart is showing the sales by year for the same region. And then the bar chart is showing the sales by year for all regions. Something like that, and apply. And then I'm going to select it. So since we have that dashboard background color thing happening there, and the captions coming up with that same color, I'm going to leave the font black, but I'm going to make it bold. And then apply. So it kind of stands out. And that is your Central Region Sales dashboard with an infographic on the top. You have your line chart for that region in the middle, and then you are able to assess all region sales by year at the bottom. So you're going to have another opportunity to create 3 more dashboards on your own. I would suggest copying and just switching out the graphics. So go ahead and get started on that, or you can build them from scratch. Go ahead and pause the video. I'm going to build mine as well. So on my central one, I right-clicked on the dashboard title, and I went to edit height, and I changed it to 24. Then I formatted the title so that it's bold and it's on the left side, so it's not sitting right above the graphic. And here is my east, my south, and my west. And I actually went to central and copied the text from the caption so I could make sure it was consistent across all of the dashboards. And I named each one accordingly. So that is one way that you can have an infographic on a dashboard. And like I said, in that folder, there are other shapes that you can play with. on your own and make them into something. Go ahead and save your file. In this module, we started with string manipulation, and we created a calculated field that combined the customer first, separated by a space, and then the customer last fields. Now, when we originally started, we hid the customer name field. As mentioned, we could have unhidden it and used that, but it was more fun to show you how to combine. And then we did another calculated field where we arranged it so it would be last name, comma, first name. We talked about potentially having to correct data exports from Tableau to Excel. You learned that Tableau arranges by dimensions, then measures, and each is arranged alphabetically. And really, you're more likely to have to correct data exports when you're using a larger amount of data than we're able to with this file. So we reviewed it, and you learned a little trick. It didn't happen. I wanted us to get an error message, which I know sounds strange, but sometimes once you do the export to Excel, if you don't save or close the Excel file and you try to do another export, you'll get an error message. In lesson 3, you learned how to blend data. We opened both of the Excel files first so you could see the difference in the data and the similarities in the data between the two files. You learned how to bring in the primary data source, and then how to edit blend relationships if necessary. You learned that the primary data source will have a blue check mark, and the secondary will have an orange check mark and an orange bar down the side of the data pane. Once you use a field from the secondary data source, all of the fields will have an orange check mark on them as well, on their pills. We learned some optimizing tips for efficient, fast visualizations on dashboard. And so we removed a sheet from a dashboard and used the dashboard action of go to sheet and wrote some explanatory text so they could see a more granular level of detail without having both of those visualizations on the dashboard. You also learned how to look at your status bar to see how many marks are in the view. If you have a lot of marks, you want to consider using some optimizing tips. And we ended by creating infographics, which we ended up using on our dashboards so we could see sales information for each individual region. We created 4 dashboards, 1 for each region. And you do have that link at the bottom where you can grab some more images that are not included in the files for video description for your future use. In Module 15, we're going to cover visual best practices. Now, most of this stuff we've been doing all along. We've been coloring our numbers. We've been using dual axes charts 2 different ways. We talked about pie charts and how they're good as a supplemental chart, but not so good just on their own. And we've been sizing our marks in order to make the information more prevalent. The one thing that we haven't done is in lesson 3. Where is the 3-dimensional data? That's going to be a really cool lesson. In the meantime, for the other lessons where we already have experience with those topics, I'm going to have you do some things on your own while I'm doing some things on my own, and then I'll show you what I've done in order to meet the criteria. So let's go ahead and get started. So in terms of coloring your numbers, I'm going to have you go to your top 10 products by sales value sheet. And you're going to do this on your own. I'll be doing it, and then I'll show you what I've done at the end. But what I'd like you to do is I want to leave this particular sheet intact. So you might want to make a copy of it, or you can start from scratch, your choice. And what I'd like it to be would be the top 4 products by sales value by region. And I'd like region to provide the color on the bars. And I'd like the mark labels to be bold. So, top 4 products by region and sales value. I would like the region to provide the color, and I would like the mark labels to be bold. Go ahead and do that one. So this is what I came up with for that challenge. And you can see which shelves and marks that I used. And I changed the filter so it reflected top 4. All right, so the next challenge for you, what I'd like you to do, the topic is dueling with dual axes. I would like you to create 2 dual axes charts, one by using Show Me and the other by dragging and dropping it when you see the dashed line. And then I'll show you what I do to that effect. You can use any dimensions and measures that you would like. So this one I did for the United States, cost and profit by year. This one I used the Show Me pane. And that's why I hid my explain data panel over there. And then the other one I did, I used drag and drop. And this is for the United States, sum and quantity. Well, quantity and sales by year. So you can drag and drop. Sometimes you have to use the Show Me pane. If you put both measures on the rows shelf, it may give you a different kind of visualization. So I actually use drag and drop for this one and Show Me on the other. So the next topic in order is connecting to 3D data, but we're going to do that at the end of this module because we're going to be using a different data source. So I'm going to come back to that topic. In the meantime, I have another assignment for you. And this one is eating humble pie, pie charts or not. What I'd like you to do is create 2 pie charts using whatever measures and dimensions you'd like. When you're done, I'll show you the ones that I am creating. My first one is max cost by region. Nothing on the shelves up here, everything on the marks card. And my second one is profit by state province group, the group that we created. And I'm showing mark labels on both of them. Our next topic is sizing to make a data story. So with my first pie chart here on the screen, you can see that I changed it to fit the entire view. And so even though it's fitting the entire view, it's still kind of small. Now, the next thing you'll notice, and you've seen this before with a pie chart, size is used for whatever measure you're using on your pie chart, as well as angle. But even though a size is automatically being used for that, once you make it into a pie chart, you can still use size to increase the size of the pie chart, even though it's filling the entire view. So this one you don't have to do on your own. I'm just going to go to size, and I'm going to drag the bar to right before the next mark on the bar. And you see how it fills up more of the view, which is better to look at it that way. You can actually see it better. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the other pie chart that I created. And now that's also sized accordingly. So what we're going to do now, we have one more topic in this module. And like I said, this module was, since we've done a lot of these things throughout the course, I wanted you to be able to do some things on your own and then see my result at least. And so we're going to be using a different file for connecting to 3D data. And so what we want to do is go ahead and save and close from the file menu your sample Superstore workbook. When I reviewed this slide with you afterwards, I realized that I didn't put the files that we're going to be using for lesson 3 on the slide. So I've edited it and added that because the slideshow is also in the files for the video description, and I want you to have it as a reference. So for lesson 3, we're going to be using an Excel file called 3D data, and we're going to be using some more of the shapes that we've already put into our My Shapes folder in the Tableau repository. So if you haven't grabbed all the files from the video description, I need you to grab the 3D data Excel file. And when you put it in your working directory, go ahead and open that file. We're going to start by looking at that file and getting some information from it. As you can see, this file has 2 sheet tabs. The first one is profit ratio, broken out by subcategory. And the second one is called densification. And let's take a look at that one. And so data densification is a process in which marks are generated in Tableau and added to the view, even though those marks aren't supported by records in the underlying data source. So the densification technique being used here will help us plot multiple points between 0 and 100. And if you notice, on the profit ratio, we don't have those values. So we're going to force them to happen even though they aren't supported by any records in the underlying data source. So the other thing is, and I'm going to write it down so we remember, I'm going to make note of the highest profit ratio, which is 44. So I've noted that down. We can go ahead and close this Excel file and connect to it in Tableau. The first thing we're going to do is drag profit ratio onto the canvas. And then we are going to double click on it to get to the physical layer. And we're going to drag densification onto the canvas. So it's going to want to create an inner join. That's the most common join type, where it's really bringing in matching records, right? Only records that match. And so what we're going to do is create a join calculation for both profit ratio, which is listed here for data source, and then for densification. So we're going to go ahead and click on Create Join Calculation, and you're going to type the number 1 and click OK. And I'll explain it after we get it in. And then you're going to do the same thing underneath densification. So you're going to go to the drop down arrow, create a join calculation and type the number 1. So when you do that, the tables are joined on an inner join using the join calculation. So I'm going to go ahead and close the join box. And to show you why we did that, if we look down at the data, you'll see that for every subcategory, there are 2 rows. And if you look over to the right in the densification column, it's giving you a row for the upper limit of the path that we want for the lower limit. So 100 and 0 for each of the subcategories in our data. That's what that join calculation did. So our next step is to go to Sheet View. And we're going to create a bin for the path measure there. So we're going to right-click on Path, hover over Create, and choose Bins. So you worked with bins when we did the histogram earlier in the course. And all we want to do here is make the size of the bin 1. And then we're going to click OK. So some of this will tie together in a few more steps. So we created our path bin. And now we're going to create a calculated field. And we're going to name it index. And the calculation we're going to do is going to be 100 minus, and then we're going to use Tableau's index function, which if you look on the right side, you see that it returns the index of the current row in the partition. Example, for the first row in the partition, index would equal 1. So we want 100 minus the index. We're going to go ahead and click OK. And that calculation will plot the x-axis values from 100 through 0, which is what we want. And now we're going to create another calculated field, and we're going to call it profit ratio value. And this calculation, we're going to use the window max function to get the max of all the data, the max value of all the data in the view. And then we also want, we're going to type max and use the max function again. And we want the maximum profit ratio. So here you'll see we want the one that's a measure, that's green, and it says profit ratio, and then in parentheses, profit ratio. That's the one we're choosing. And so we want to be able to compare the max profit ratio from the window with the max profit ratio. And we're going to go ahead and click OK. So now we have our index and our profit ratio value calculated fields. Now we're going to create another calculated field. So again, bear with me. Once we start putting it all together, it will make a lot more sense than it does doing the individual steps. We have one more calculated field to create. And we're going to name this one row. And we're going to use an if, then, else construct here. So I'm going to grab the if function, and I'm going to reference index, and not the function, but the calculated field that we created. So if index, and we're going to do less than equal, and we're going to grab profit ratio value calculated field. Then we're going to grab the then function, and we're going to reference our index calculated field again. Grab else function, and we're going to use the null function, and we need to give it an end statement. So if the index is less than or equal to the profit ratio value, then use the index, or else leave it blank or leave it as a null. And we're going to click OK. So now we have our 3 calculated fields. We're going to change the mark type to shape. And we're going to drag subcategory to columns. And we're also going to drag subcategory to shape. We're going to grab our path bin, and we want to drop that on detail. Looks weird right now. And we're going to drag our row calculation to rows. And we want the row calculation to compute using the path bin. So we're going to right click on it, hover over compute using, and choose path bin. So right now, look at the numbers on the axis, and we want them to be from 0 to 100. So in order to make that happen, we're going to do a few things. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to edit the index calculated field. And we're going to use apply here. Let me collapse this right side, move it over. We're going to use apply when we do our changes and leave this window open so we can keep changing things. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to delete the 100 and apply. And you notice now, because we left the minus sign in the calculation, it's going from 0 to negative 100. All right? And that's not what we want. The axis is negative. So now we're going to edit it again, and we're going to do 50 minus index and apply. And since we want the axis to have a range of values of, equaling 100, now it's going from positive 50 to negative 50 because we're plotting 100 points. Change it back to 100 and apply. And so our highest value is 44. And that's why it looks like that right now. So go ahead and click OK on our index calculation for right now. And we're going to go to shape on the mark shelf. And we're going to do the drop down next to default. Go to My Shapes. So in My Shapes, we used the people shapes earlier, right? And we're going to use these 3D square shapes. So I'm going to select copiers and give it the first 3D square. Select the envelope, give it the second one, and continue going down the list, assigning the squares to the different subcategories. And we're going to go ahead and click OK. Wow, we're getting there. Not quite done yet. Not quite done yet. Let's switch it to entire view. And we're going to go to the size on the marks card. And I'm going to increase the size. Go a little bit more. Looking pretty good right now. We have some other cleanup work to do here. On the left side, let's right click on the axis and get rid of show header. And then I'm going to right click on the rows pill and go to format. Actually, I'm going to right click inside the chart and go to format. And I'm on the sheet tab and we're going to go to the lines. And for the sheet, we don't want to see any grid lines. That's already on none. We don't want to see 0 lines. And we don't want to see axis ruler lines. And then go to rows. And it's the same thing. We want none on the top 2 and none for axis rulers. So you get rid of all those grid lines in the background. And then we can go ahead and close the format pane. And we're going to drag profit ratio value to label. So you see at the bottom of each shape, you're seeing the profit ratio value. And what we want to do is we're going to go to label and let's go to the font and make it 12 point. I'm going to color it like a darkish gray color. And then I'm going to go to the text. And at the end of that, I'm going to type a %sign. And click apply. And you can see the change at the bottom. Now, we really want those percentages at the top. So I'm going to click OK on the edit label. And I'm going to go to the alignment. And I'm going to do the top aligned under vertical. So now they're on the top of our 3D shapes. And we're going to right click on the subcategory title and format it. And we want to make that font 14 point. And so a lot of steps in the process. However, the end result is this, a pretty nice looking 3D chart. And what we're going to do now is we're going to name the sheet. We'll just call it 3D chart. And you're going to save and close this file. And you're going to name it. You can call it 3D data as the workbook name. close it, and reopen Superstore Live. This module, you got a lot of hands-on and on your own practice with things that we've been covering throughout the course, like coloring your numbers, dueling with dual axes, eating humble pie, pie charts or not, and sizing to make a data story. What was new here is the three-dimensional data. So I know that process is kind of long. I mean, we had 3 calculated fields, we had a bin, we had all kinds of stuff going on. We used the shapes, but the end result was really, really cool. So now you have an example of how to do three-dimensional data using those custom shapes in Tableau. In our final module, you'll learn how to share your information. We did a little bit of this earlier in the course. In the first lesson, you'll learn how to package your workbooks. Lesson 2, how to publish to Tableau Public. And Lesson 3, mobilizing your dashboards. Let's get started. So earlier in the course, much earlier, we created a packaged workbook. We used our vehicles and pricing file in order to do so because we have both of those Excel files saved locally. Sample Superstore is different because we got this from within Tableau and we don't have the data source or images saved locally. So what we're going to do here is let's save and close our Sample Superstore file. And let's go to our start screen and reopen 3D data, because we have that Excel file stored locally. And when you export a packaged workbook, it contains the locally saved files and images. And so we're going to go to the File tab and we're going to choose Export Packaged Workbook. And we'll name it 3D Data-Packaged. And just a reminder, it gives it a different extension, .twbx. And the icon has like a, I don't even know what color that is, but it has a vertical band on the left-hand side. And of course, you can always look at the type. And we're going to save. So you can literally send that to anyone that has Tableau Desktop, Tableau Reader, and they can open it and have access to the data source and the images. Go ahead and create a dashboard sheet, and you're going to go and just add this visualization to it. Let me change my size first. Now, we're not going to do anything else to it on a dashboard because I want to leave this for you to play with, later on your own, adding other objects to it or dashboard actions or coloration, whatever you want to do with it. Adding captions and stuff like that might be helpful. So I just wanted to put it on a dashboard, and I'm going to name the dashboard 3D subcategory, and this is profit ratio. And then I'm going to hide the title at the top, and I'm going to show the dashboard title, which will be the same as what we named the sheet. And now let's save. And we want to publish this to Tableau Public. So in order to do that, you're going to go up to the server menu, and at the bottom, you'll see Tableau Public, and you can save, you can open from Tableau Public, save to Tableau Public, or save as. We're going to choose Save to Tableau Public. And Tableau Public is the free version of Tableau. If you don't have an account, you can go to the bottom and create one now for free. I'm going to, if you do have an account, you just need to log into it. So I'm going to do that now and sign in. So this is good. I tried to show you an error earlier and couldn't make it happen. So this is saying that the Tableau server you are publishing to, which is Tableau Public, does not permit external database connections. Use the data menu to create an extract for the following data sources. So I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to go to the data. Actually, I'm going to do it like this. Let's see. So right here on the data menu, you're going to hover over profit ratio plus 3D data, and you're going to choose extract data. And specify how to store data in the extract. So store data using one table for each logical table. So we're going to go down, and it says use this option if you need to use extract filters, aggregation, or other extract settings. If I do the option button for physical tables, it wants to know like how much data to extract, and everything is kind of dimmed out here. You can't do anything but go to extract at the bottom. So let's click extract at the bottom. So other extracts that you have, you know, they have the .hyper extension, and we're going to leave the same file name and save. And then now I can go back to the server menu, hover over Tableau Public, and save to Tableau Public. And so anyone else on Tableau Public can look for and find this visualization. And by the way, I should address this. It's my name is Trish Connor Cato, but it says Veronica Young here. I'm using another account from my company with a different employee name. So that's what's going on there. But here is the details, the date it was published, 3D data, so on and so forth. There's some controls at the bottom where this visualization can be shared, right? It can be downloaded, and you can look at it in full screen. So that's kind of how that goes. Now I'm back in Tableau Desktop, and I want to focus on the left side of the screen. I briefly mentioned that there is a phone view here, right? Where when you have a dashboard and you switch to phone view, it lets you see how it would look if it was viewed on a mobile device. Now, Tableau does have a mobile app, and it's available for both Apple and in the Google Store. And it doesn't allow you to do any edits. It basically allows you to view stuff. So this view gives you an idea of what it's going to look like. And depending on the size of the mobile devices that are being used, so if you hover over an edge, it will pop up, do you want to turn off the auto-generated layout and create a custom one? Well, this looks about the size of most people's cell phones. So I'm going to say no here and leave it like that. And then right underneath where it says phone, you have device preview. So now you get a little bit of a toolbar up here, and it's showing you the phone dimensions, and you can adjust it even though we said no. So here's specific phones, like if you know everybody's using iPhones, that kind of thing, you can go ahead and change it to the type of phone that is being used. And so just by doing that, I'm going to put mine on the Samsung Galaxy S series layout. That's kind of how that works. And it will auto-generate a layout for you. However, it's best if you look at it and make sure it's appropriate for the devices that are being used in your organization. Go ahead and save. And now we can change it back to default. And something else I want to show you is the layout tab at the top. All right. So we only have the 3D chart on here. I mean, some of this you can do from the dashboard, show title, whether it's floating type of thing. You can actually put in position and size coordinates. You can apply a border to it, and it kind of shows inside the pane there, the border. All right. So, and you could make it thicker by using these boxes if you'd like. So I took the border away. And sometimes it depends on what kind of data is on the sheet, or what kind of visualization, I should say. Sometimes the outer and inner padding, you can kind of play around with that as well. So go ahead and save one more time. In this module, we began by packaging our workbook with the 3D data. And we use that one because we have the actual data source and shape files saved locally, which become part of the package. Then we moved on to publishing to Tableau Public. And we used the server menu for that. Tableau Public, again, is the free component of Tableau. And when we tried to publish it, we got an error message. And the error message basically led us to having to create an extract in order to be able to publish to Tableau Public. So we were successful with publishing it, and we viewed it on Tableau Public. And you saw that people can share from there, they can download it, so on and so forth. And in the final lesson, you learned how to mobilize your dashboards. You learned that Tableau has a mobile app available both for Apple and like Samsung phones, Androids, I should say. So available for both Apple and Android in their respective stores. And you learned how to change the layout and how you could even assign it to a specific phone. And so depending on what your organization uses. You also learned that when the mobile app is being used, it doesn't allow editing, it's just for viewing. In this extensive course, we started by connecting to a variety of data sources, in particular text, Excel, and Access database data sources. We spent some time learning how to make dashboards relevant. We did some string manipulation. So we used the concatenation character to put customer first and customer last together again with a space in between. And we even did the reverse where we had customer last, comma, customer first. We also concatenated region and state fields with slashes in between. I tried to have an error come up when we were correcting data exports from Tableau to Excel, but you learned how Tableau arranges the data when you're doing that, and you learned what to look out for. Then we got into blending data. So we had 2 separate Excel files that we used. You also learned how to edit blend relationships and about the color coding. So the primary data source will be with a blue check mark. Secondary has an orange check and an orange bar down the side of the data pane. And when you use a field in the view from the secondary, that field will have an orange check mark on it also. And we learned how to exclude 1 bit of data. We went over some optimizing tips for efficient, fast visualization. And we removed the state by sales table from the state by sales map dashboard. And we used a dashboard action to link to the sheet instead. Then we got into the fun stuff by adding an infographic to the Tableau dashboard. And so we went through that process, partly with my guidance, and then you got to do a lot of it on your own, which is always good. And we ultimately ended up creating an individual dashboard for each region. We went over visual best practices. So you got a lot more hands-on here. What was really new here, so you got to do some examples of coloring your numbers, dueling with dual axes, and pie charts or not, and sizing to make a data story. The new information here was creating 3-dimensional data. So we went through the process of doing that. We had, like, I believe 3 calculated fields, a bin. You learned a little bit about the densification technique, so on and so forth. I thought that ended up being a really nice 3D column chart. And then we ended by reviewing how to package workbooks with data. And then we published to Tableau Public. And when we did that, we got an error, which basically said we had to create an extract in order to be able to publish. So we did that, and we were able to view it in Tableau Public and see what options are out there. Then you learned about mobilizing your dashboards. You learned about the Tableau mobile app that's available in the Apple Store as well as the Android Store, the Google Store. And we learned how to affect the layout in mobile view.